Hi, this is Sean O'Shea. I'm the Managing Director of the O'Shea Netley's Advisory in Los Angeles. And this is the first of a series of blogs that we want to do that relate to a updated discussion of the 1031 provisions. Going back about 3 years ago, I am one of the few brokers who's been attending the Jeremiah Long Advanced 1031 seminars each year that Lou Weller and Mary Foster have been running for the last 21 years. And I've been going to them for about 12 or 13 years. And in these last 3 years, there have been some pretty significant changes in the discussions. By the way, the next seminar is coming up in November in Arizona and might be worth exploring. And we'll be happy to provide you with contact information in this regard. But this is a message for both investors as well as tax accountants and lawyers who have been monitoring the 1031 provisions and the discussions over the last couple of years about the prospect of some repeal of the 1031 provisions. Now, going back about 3 years ago, there was the suggestion that the Ways and Means Committee was going to look hard at some new revenue sources, and one of the possible sources would be repealing 1031 provisions. Another subject that was being discussed at the time was terminating the interest deduction, both of which would have a significant impact on the real estate industry as well as other related leasing operations around the country. 2 years ago, I was party to a group that had funded the Ernst & Young report, which basically outlined the negative impact to the real estate community at large if in fact there was to be a repeal of 1031. And of course it would have a pretty dramatic impact on title companies and qualified intermediaries, but also on real estate brokers who have a certain number of their transactions generated by 1031 exchanges, certainly an impact on various service providers. So 2 years ago, they said, we've done this report. The group spent $375,000 developing the report, and it was put on the desk of every single legislator in the House of Representatives and every single senator. And that was 2 years ago, and this was at the very first phase of any discussion. And when I would raise this subject in the real estate community, the general reaction was that it's impossible. Don't you understand how serious this matter is? And I would say yes, but you were not sitting at this conference where they're talking about it somewhat seriously. That was 2 years ago. Last year, the chief lobbyist for the Federation of Exchange Accommodators made his lunchtime report. And he said, last year I was telling you about this report that we had done, that we were trying to educate the legislators, particularly the Ways and Means Committee in Washington, as to what the negative impact would be on the real estate community. And at the time they were saying, this is pre-election, that whoever the Republican candidate might be, that they wanted to stand in front of the American public and be able to say that they're not in the back pocket of the 1%, and that as they're seeking revenues, they're taking a very hard look at changing the 1031 provisions and either significantly restricting them. And there were 3 proposals, one from the White House, one from the Senate Finance Committee, and one from Ways and Means, which is where all tax law has to be generated. Very simply, while this conversation is one that you have a reflexive reaction from everyone in the real estate community that it can't happen and shouldn't happen, and in particular with President Trump as a member of the real estate community at large, President Trump would never let this happen. Well, now as the conversation shifts from health care to tax reform, and some of the monies that were expected to be received from the adjustments in the American Health Care Act, they expected initially $800 billion to be redeployed for tax reform. That does not appear to be happening at this point. So this whole subject of reviewing sources and new sources for new revenues is now more acute than it's ever been. So what I'd like to propose is that we will do a series of these blogs where we will discuss very specifically what's really going on. We have the benefit of monitoring this year after year, and we get the staff committee notes from the Ways and Means Committee. And it's our distinct impression, and I admit that I'm a minority of practitioners, our distinct impression is that the 1031 is in fact going to be repealed. Obviously that has tremendous impact on the transaction pipeline. It has an impact on how things are financed going forward. People are not going to be buying properties and being able to trade out of them in 2 or 3 years without significant tax consequence. And of course we're at the end of a cycle now where the peak of the bubble cycle is over. So I think this is a subject that deserves serious consideration, and we're looking forward to establishing a dialogue with you to really review what's going on, because I think it has gone from the possibility phase to the probability phase. Thanks very much for your attention. We'll be in touch.